Hello, I'm Callum.
And I'm Gracie.
And welcome to the Dead Sibling Society.
Callum lost his brother Liam when he was just 12.
And Gracie's sister Laura died last year.
We don't think that we speak about death, dying and grief anywhere near enough.
We definitely don't. So this podcast, we're going to be speaking all about it. The highs, the lows, the funny bits, the sad bits. And we've got a very special guest, haven't we?
We do. We have my mother, Nicola Nuttall, in today, who, alongside raising me and doing a brilliant job, thanks, has an incredible book, The Stars Will Still Be There, out, which talks about my family and my sister and our journey with grief. So, should we get into it?
Yeah, let's ask her. So here goes Gracie. Nicola Nuttall, Mum. Hello and welcome.
Hello, this is a bit strange,
It
isn't
is.
Quite nervous.
Really?
Have you seen
Yeah.
the tissues that are like strategically placed behind her? Which
Just
she
in
will
case.
need. She will definitely need.
Just in case, I'm going to be a big brave girl.
But
Big
you
break.
you have sat through every podcast recording so far. We've just not been asking you questions. Can I just start by asking the obvious question to you both? Is how do you both feel about speaking about this? Do you think we can ask anything or
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is no one that I think I've ever been as honest to about not just grief but everything with you. We're so lucky. Don't do that. We're so lucky to have such a good relationship, and I am eternally grateful for that.
I
But
feel
she has
sick
said,
already.
I know,
God.
she said there's nothing off the table. So, what am I getting for Christmas?
Now.
Well, let's ask the first proper question. It's a bit different because the person you're both remembering is the same
I
person.
know, it's
But
really weird.
Can you tell us a memory about Laura?
Oh my gosh. It's really hard because there are so many, because she was so utterly bonkers in so many ways. And she was a girl that always had a plan for life. She was always coming up with crazy things like I'm going to put a mezzanine in my bedroom. I'm going to buy a bathtub.
And a hammock.
She wanted to turn a bathtub into a breakfast at Tiffany's sofa. Why can't I buy it and just get a saw and do it? So she was always coming up with stuff. But one of my fondest memories was Laura's first half day at school. She'd only been there for like 2 hours, and I came to pick her up and thought, we'll walk down the hill. And I said, so how was it? How was the first day? And she went, it was okay, but we didn't do any French. And that really kind of summed
That was
Laura
Laura
up
at
at
four.
4.
Yeah.
Wow, there you go. She definitely was the better sister, wasn't she?
Oh, massively.
French.
The wrong one went. We're all devastated.
Don't be ridiculous.
No, I know a lot of these questions on the answers that I'm gonna get from you, but I think your journey with grief didn't just start with my sister Laura. You have had your own grief journey before my sister Laura. You had a sister called Laura too. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about her?
Yeah, I did. I am also a member of the Dead Sibling Club, and it's a really rubbish club to be a member of, but it has great members.
Yeah, I know, sorry.
Great
Don't-
members.
Don't slag us off.
Yeah, it's one of those stories of things that happened in the 1970s where people didn't talk very much. And I had a sister who was 2 years younger than me, called Laura, and I also had a brother, and still have a brother, who was only about 18 months old. So actually Laura was 2.5, Neil was 1.5, and I was just coming up to 5. And people were really not great at talking about grief or loss in those days. And as far as I can remember, I had a sister, and then I didn't have a sister. And I'm not really sure what happened or where she went or why she was no longer there. And I remember my dad coming out to the car to tell us that she died. And he was actually telling his sister and her husband. I was just in the back of the car going, what's happened? And then I also remember coming home from school and literally sitting on the toilet, swinging my legs, and the bath being full of floral tributes. And I don't really remember anybody telling me what had happened or where she'd gone or why life was suddenly different. And we didn't really talk about it as a family. So children, in the absence of facts and truth, make up their own narrative. So for me as a child, I was like, oh, what did I do wrong? Why did nobody tell me? Was I the cause of that? And I didn't really want to ask my mum and dad, because if I did, they'd cry, and I didn't want to make my parents cry. So you sort of fill in the gaps, but you also don't want to talk about it, and you don't want to say anything that's going to upset anybody else. And I think that's kind of a common thing with grief. We're always really conscious of upsetting the other people in the family. And as someone that had only just turned 5, I didn't have a great deal of authority within the family unit or things to say. So I just sort of got on with it. And I, over the years, asked the odd question as to why did she die? Because I remember we used to go in an ambulance to hospital, and she would have some physio. And I remember that her hand was kind of clenched up when she was little, but I didn't really know anything about it. And my mum said to me that, she went into convulsions, and my mum didn't drive at the time, and they had to get someone to take them to hospital, and she said I wrapped her up to keep her warm, and I now know that was the last thing I should have done. Still, there's not an awful lot of information there as to why she died.
And do you think that information is there, that your parents were told something more and they just didn't, and they have struggled to tell you? Or do you think perhaps just actually no one really knew why she died?
I think nobody really knew why she died. And retrospectively, my parents have tried to get more information, and actually they found that it really wasn't available. I think they'd found some information that said it was atrophy of the brain.
Okay.
But actually that doesn't really mean anything. And you think this is a time before CT scans and MRI scans. So how would they actually really know an awful lot about what was happening in the brain in those days anyway?
How do you wish that topic had been approached to you when you were younger? I know perhaps there was no knowledge of exactly how she died, but kind of not really speaking about it a huge amount, and perhaps your dad addressing his siblings before speaking to you. How do you wish that had changed?
I think we don't always recognise that small children have agency. And I think just even if you don't know the answers, saying that you don't know the answers is actually okay. We don't understand why this has happened, but we can tell you it's not anything that you did. I think that would have been important. And maybe someone looking out for me at school. I mean, I don't know if anyone did. They certainly didn't say anything. They might have been watching from afar and just keeping an eye on me, but it never felt like anybody knew, and nobody told me what to say if someone said to me, have you got any brothers or sisters? And I went to school thinking, what's the answer to that now? That's become a real trick question. I've definitely got a brother, and I'm safe with the brother question, but have I got another sibling? Have I not got another sibling? You know, those questions, no one tells you how to answer them. And I was quite small. So I just spent many years being slightly confused and feeling a bit on the edge of things, because it also rocks your world that somebody who's in your family suddenly goes away. And for many years, I felt massively insecure, because if she's gone, anyone could go. And I used to have recurring nightmares, one of which was that I came home from school and my whole family have moved and nobody knows where they've gone. And there's some strange woman saying, oh, I'm sorry, love, they don't live here anymore. And that came to me all the time. And so I obviously had quite a deep-seated fear that other members of the family could disappear like that. And the other nightmare was losing my brother in Liverpool Museum, and it was shutting, and I had to find him because we were going to get trapped in there with all the mummies and the dinosaurs and the skeletons.
No
so
one
I was
wants
obviously
to be stuck in Liverpool Museum.
No, or any museum. And then they invented the night at the museum, and I was like, oh, I'm not watching that. It's my worst horror. So yeah, I was probably quite an insecure child. And I think just talking, even if you don't know the answers, saying you don't know the answers is okay, I would say.
I think your mum and dad were just so, there was no conversation about grief then. And they, you know, I know they'll probably listen to this and they'll be so upset about it, but they did the same as you and dad. They did what they could at the time.
Absolutely, and they got no support and no counselling. Nobody offered them anything, and they were in the early 20s with 3 small children.
And they were just trying to protect their little baby.
Yeah, they were, and they did absolutely the best they could.
They did, and they're fabulous.
Yes, they are.
I was going to say, obviously you named your daughter Laura after your sister Laura, and then at 18 your daughter Laura got diagnosed with brain cancer. Don't cry.
Not crying.
Don't cry.
It's just really dusty in here.
What that in itself must be really hard to process and to deal with.
Well, it's a blooming twist of fate, isn't it? I mean, to go through it once feels like bad luck, and then to find yourself staring down the barrel of a second time just felt like, wow, this is really quite unlucky, to put it mildly. Yeah, that was really tough. And I know we look for positive signs in the world, and we look for things that we can go, oh yeah, this is a great thing. I couldn't help thinking, that's a really not a good sign. I've just brought this on us by calling my daughter the name of my dead sister. I brought this on myself.
Did you think that?
A little bit.
You thought that the naming of your daughter...
How could you not?
I know. Well, you can't, you just look at that and think, wow, this is really bad luck. And then you think, God, was it a cursed name? I mean, it sounds really superstitious, but it just felt like, wow, this is the worst luck. Not just for me, but for my parents to have to go through it again.
Do you think it was in the absence of something being explainable that you were just trying to find a reason for this awful thing happening?
Yeah, it's that same thing, isn't it? Filling in the narrative. And unfortunately, Laura was diagnosed with a brain tumour and brain cancer. And it's one of those cancers that has absolutely no lifestyle factor. There's nothing you can do to avoid it with so many childhood cancers. I mean, as you get older and you can see, well, there's a link between some kinds of lung cancer and smoking. You can see a cause and effect. But with childhood cancers, there's nothing. It's just bad luck. And that's it. And that feels... Well, why couldn't we fix that? Why couldn't we know? Why isn't there a factor? But there just isn't. And that's really hard for rational people to deal with, isn't it? And you'll know yourself, Callum, that it's really hard. You want an answer. You want a reason. Is it a pylon? Is it 5G? We don't have an answer. So we try and make them up. So calling somebody a name is not, it's not a direct cause and effect, but it just feels like bad luck.
When you were first told that Laura had cancer, I know obviously I was 16 and she was 18. We've spoken about this a little bit, and I think you speak about it in your book quite a bit, but what was that first kind of... Take me to when she told you that Laura had cancer. What, obviously you're an adult, you're a mum. There's a fly buzzing around, isn't there, wanting to make himself known?
Maybe it's Laura.
Maybe.
If we're going to follow your superstitions.
Maybe. But in that moment, you were on your own. My dad was still up at home with the dog. You had 2 young children with you. Not very young, but teenage. Talk me through that.
I wasn't on my own because you were there.
Oh,
and I'll always
lovely.
be so grateful that you were there, because if I'd been on my own, it would have been 100 times worse. So I was really grateful to you, Gracie. I'm so glad you were there. Not for your sake, for mine.
she's got all the
It's terrible for you. Terrible for you, but
Selfishly.
great
But it
for me.
helped you for a couple of days.
Do you know what? One of the first things that went through my mind. So I'll just backtrack, shall I?
Sorry, yeah.
So Laura was in her first term at university. She was absolutely fine as far as we were concerned. Yeah. And then she said, oh, I've been getting a few headaches. And I said, oh, you'll be like me. We get migraines. Bad luck. You've got that in the genetic lottery. And then she said something about, I woke up. I'd been just reading a book on my bed early evening. And then I woke up on the floor and my face was wet and had a bruise. And even then, I didn't go, oh my God, that's something really serious. I said, when you go and register with your GP, just make sure you mention it. That's all I said.
But
I didn't go.
You...
Oh, I know, but now I think, why weren't alarm bells ringing? Because I just didn't know that was something bad. And Laura got involved in everything in her first few weeks at university. She joined the St John's Ambulance. She joined loads of societies. Freshers Week, you join everything. And one of the things she was really keen to join was the Royal Navy University Unit. So she'd signed up for that, loved it. She was getting measured up for a uniform. She was going to get paid when she went off. And you know what Laura was like. She wanted to get paid for everything. And she'd also got a job at Ladbroke. So she was on it. But as part of the joining of the Navy, she needed to go for a medical. And she went for the medical, and she'd run a marathon in May, so she was really fit. That wasn't a worry. And she went for an eye test. And she went on her way to lectures, and she phoned me up later that day and said they can't pass the eye test because apparently there's swelling behind my eyes, and they referred me to go to Moorfields Eye Hospital. And I said, have you been? And she went, no. Why haven't you been? Well, because I need to go to Ladbrokes and tell them I can't do the shift because I need to go to hospital, and they're not answering the phone, so I need to walk there. And also I needed to do a presentation that I'd prepared for. So typical Laura. She was always very diligent. And eventually, late afternoon, she went over to Moorfields. And she phoned me, she said, apparently there's nothing to worry about. They can't really see anything. They're going to refer me to a neurologist, but there's no big deal. And I was just like, ooh, it didn't sit right. I thought, how can there be swelling and it not be anything? So I phoned a friend up who is an ophthalmist, and I asked her, and she went, well, it could be a number of things. Normally this papilloderma that they see behind the eyes is people that are overweight or have diabetes or things. It's quite unusual in a young person. And so I resolved to phone her up the next day and go, right, we need to do something about that. But she didn't pick up the phone at all the next day. And we spent the whole morning trying to get in touch with her and getting progressively more and more concerned as to why she wasn't picking up the phone. And eventually she did pick up, and it had been on silent because she had the worst headache of her life and hadn't been able to stop throwing up. And it was getting quite late in the day when she actually did respond to us. So I said to Gracie, right, we need to go down to London. We need to go down. So we got the last train from Preston, raced down. And all the way I'm thinking, am I overreacting? Am I being ridiculous? Is this nothing? By the time we got to her halls, she wasn't picking up again. We had to almost break into her room to go in and see her. And she was curled up in a ball on the bed.
In a black room, wasn't it?
In a really dark room. And from the minute I opened the door, felt that wave of dread. This is actually really bad. This isn't a migraine. This is something much more serious. So we went down to the security guards and went, right, where's the nearest A&E? And they were like some comedy double act. Well, it might be. Right, just which one is it? So we ended up getting her into a taxi.
First ever Uber I'd ever ordered.
First Uber ever. Laura's throwing up into a little plastic bag.
Bad
and we've
rating I got from that, let me tell you.
Oh, really?
So we packed a little bag. We get her over to Homerton. It was full of really drunk and bizarre people, one of whom came over chatting to us. She went, what's wrong with her? And I said, I don't know. That's why we're here. She just can't stop being sick.
Well.
She went, it's drugs.
She did.
And
she's actually Welsh.
It's drugs. I went, no, it's not drugs. She went, my mother, she doesn't know it's drugs either. And we were like, right, I'm really enjoying your one-woman show here, but this girl is still throwing up. And it was just weird, wasn't it? Yeah. We got her into a room. And all the while we're laughing, and all the while I'm going, I'm wasting everybody's time.
No, she'd had some painkillers at this point. Don't make it sound like she had her head in a sick ball and we were howling with laughter. She was quite a lot. She'd bounced back really quickly. So at that point we were like, we feel like we're faking this now. Like we feel like we could probably go home and. But we wanted to get her checked out, didn't we? Yeah, so the wonderful A&E doctor, who was called Amber, came in. I told her about the opticians, and I think that was one of the deciding factors in sending her for a CT scan. Yeah. If we hadn't had that information, I doubt she'd have been sent for one, but she was. And we were still laughing when she came back into the room, and I'll never forget it. She went, have you got chairs? And I thought, we've nicked the chairs. And I stood up to give her the chairs back because I thought, she needs them for someone else. People. I went, I'm sorry, do you need them? And she went, no, I just want to check you've got somewhere to sit. And then you're like, this is bad. And she said, Laura's got, looks like 2 brain tumours. And my first thought was, oh my God, I haven't been wasting everybody's time. Yeah. And it's a ridiculous thing to think. And then I thought, oh my God, she's got a brain tumour. And I had to phone Mark and tell him, and he was fast asleep. It was about 3:00 in the morning. I left you in with Laura, and I went into that horrible bad news room with the fake flowers and the low chairs and the box of tissues. And I had to phone Mark and just turn his world upside down as well. And it was the hardest phone call I've ever made. And then we just kind of got on with it after that, didn't we? Well, while you were doing that, me and Laura were playing Heads Up on my phone, so we were fine. You still got that on video, haven't you? And we had to leave her there and go back into our Travelodge room and start making phone calls. And life was never the same from that point onwards. Sorry. Do you want a tissue? Oh, right. Yeah, I do. Here's one I prepared earlier. Who'd have thought I would have expected to cry?
So the worst bit of that evening, though, must have been Travelodge, because
was bad.
That's what I'm
was
getting
bad.
from this whole story.
It was a massive room.
Massive
you
room.
guys
It's the
in
one with the
charge.
accessibility. But as we were going back in, white and crying our eyes out, all the builders that were using that as their temporary accommodation were coming out with the big butties and the drinks as we're going in, and it was just like
Different
a
worlds.
weird Twilight crossover.
I remember finding out Liam had cancer again, and I had to stay a bit longer at school, and Mum came to collect me, and she told me, my parents were great at breaking news, they were very good throughout, but she told me, I can't even remember her telling me properly, but then I was walking back and I was just in absolute tears, and Lollipop Lady was like, cheer up, whatever. My mum just turned to her, lovely Lollipop Lady, turned to her, went, his brother's just found out he's got cancer again. So I was like, just different worlds out there that no one knows what they're seeing when they're seeing someone cry.
I love it when the claws come out on Mama Bears.
Yeah,
Mama Bears.
They're always protective.
You've had a few.
Don't mess with a Mama Bear. Definitely not.
So that awful day then turned into a number of years, wasn't it, of fighting and doing amazing things, having tough days. Can you just summarise that period for us for a bit?
It was a bit of a bonkers period because there was a lot of things going on at the same time. We were fundraising to try and pay for treatment for Laura because we'd found other options that weren't available in the UK that we could access in Germany. And so when you find out you have a cancer that really only has very, very basic, fairly ineffective treatment, and you're given a prognosis of 12 months, when that's your child, you think, no, I'm sorry. We are making huge improvements in cancer treatment, and I cannot accept that we are giving an 18-year-old girl a 12-month prognosis. It just makes no sense. Where is that rising tide that raises all boats? We're doing brilliantly with leukemia, doing brilliantly with breast cancer. Why is this so utterly shit? Sorry, I'm not allowed to swear probably.
You can swear.
And I just couldn't believe it was as bad as it was. So I would just spend hours at night on the computer trying to find other treatments, find little glimmers of hope, even if there wasn't a recognised trial and there wasn't data that had been peer reviewed over a 10-year period. Show me a glimmer of positivity, show me anecdotal results. And so I'd go into the oncologist with all these things printed out, and he would go, no, not enough evidence. But if you're not giving us any hope, we're going to find our own hope. And you just can't, if you're offering nothing, then we're going to fill in the gaps and try and find things that will work. So those things were expensive, not because we were being ripped off or anything, just because going out to Germany and accessing treatment cost money. So we were fundraising and identifying treatment options. And then alongside that, Laura's friends have all gone off to university. They're in their first year having lives and experiences, and Laura's at home. And with the best will in the world, we're not that entertaining, are we?
Excuse you. I did a great job of entertaining.
So we thought, right, well, in fact, Gracie thought, let's come up with a bucket list. Let's come up with things to do to keep Laura entertained while she's having treatment. Because going for radiotherapy every day and having chemo is crap. Mm-hmm. It's really boring. She was recovering from brain surgery as well. So there's a lot going on. But we came up with a list. Well, she came up with her bizarre list of things, and we had to kind of tone it down. Things like go down a sewer, go and visit a jail. Laura, where's the Taylor Swift? Gracie was. Where's the good stuff? But it was an interesting list of things, wasn't it? She wanted to go to the baked beans factory in Wigan. She wanted to go fishing with Bob Mortimer and Paul Whitehouse.
But the thing you're leaving out of this is the fact that you made these things possible. She came up with these bizarre, weird and wonderful things that she wanted to do, and you actually turn that into an activity and a bucket list.
Through scrambled
Beggs on toast is what I used to call it. Nicola's doing another scrambled beg on toast, and it would be
scrambled bag.
small things, and this is where I've got it from. Small things like we were on a really noisy train carriage. I remember this going down to London, and because I had watched you conjure up mad activities, I marched down to first class and I went, really sorry, but my sister's got cancer, can we move into first class? And they did it. And so many things like that. But you just give us a list of some of the magical things that you managed to get.
Well, I think once it works, then you think, oh, it's
You
worth
had
a
an
try.
incredible email.
It's worth a try. And we were very, very lucky in that we were supported by our local BBC station, Northwest Tonight, who really, without their help, we wouldn't have been able to do all those things. But they covered our story right from the beginning, which meant we had a clip. And we had a few like BBC News items that we were able to then attach to the email. And it was just worth asking the question. So, yeah, we shared things on Twitter, we sent emails, and Laura got to, what did she do? Well, we went on safari in South Africa, thanks to British Airways. We went out to watch Saturday Night Live being filmed and stayed in the Plaza Hotel.
So far, not one of these I've been invited to yet. Carry on.
And it was amazing. We went to, as I say, the Beans Factory, the Uncle Joe's Mint Ball Factory.
Uncle Joe's Mint Ball is the best one out of the lot.
It was amazing. And we just did loads of things. She went to the James Bond premiere. That
You've
took a
not come
lot
up
of
with
emails.
one that I've been invited
Okay,
to
what
yet.
did you do? You got to go on the Royal Navy ship down the Manchester Ship Canal.
Woohoo!
She didn't love that one. She didn't love
No
it.
words. No
What
words.
else did we did quite a lot in
Michelle
London.
Obama.
Michelle
You went to
Obama.
that?
I went to that one.
Did
Thank you,
Oh,
Callum.
yeah, she
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
Oh,
She got to meet Michelle Obama.
that's
That
quite
was
good.
amazing. That was fabulous. We had tea at the Ritz.
Yep, did that one.
We went and had lunch at the Clink, which is in Brixton Prison. Which
Went
was
to prison.
You went to that one. That was
Yeah.
really good.
And there's a wonderful quote. I'm not someone that usually quotes things, but by Bruce McLaren, life is measured in achievement, not in years alone. And in those years, it sounded like there was achievement and memory after memory after memory after memory. Can you talk to us a little bit about when it felt like that there was no hope anymore? You had been searching for these treatments, things got worse. It was more and more difficult to find these memories to have together as a family.
Well, we never gave up, really. We were ridiculously positive because Mark,
Sickeningly.
Laura's dad, was sickeningly positive at all times and tried to maintain that positivity. When sometimes that was a bit glass half empty, he was always, this glass is so full it's overflowing. But Laura had a number of brain surgeries. She had 2 recurrences, went back and had further brain surgery. And we were lucky that we had a brilliant surgeon who never gave up on us, Mr. Durso, who's fabulous. And so, yeah, she was having repeated brain surgeries, went back to university, did a full 3 years, graduated with a 2-1 in philosophy, politics and economics when nobody thought she would go back to university.
Amazing.
She was like, hold my beer, watch me do this. And she did. And her graduation was the best day ever, wasn't it? It was amazing. And I don't think we ever... We knew there was only one way it was going to end, but we were just really positive that we could put that off for as long as possible. And it probably wasn't until the autumn of 2022 that things started to look really quite bleak. We'd just done the Great North Run as a family, so she'd got around 13.1 miles. And only about a week after that, we found out it was back for a 4th time, which just felt like, again, it felt that whole relentless thing, didn't it? And we had a Ukrainian family living with us at the time, and it just felt like really tough timing. You know, they'd just come back from walking our dog, and you and I ended up kind of crumbled onto the
No, you
tarmac.
didn't tell me till I got home from uni.
I know. Well, I couldn't tell you while you were driving. 'Cause
I
didn't
rung you and
trust
said,
you.
how did the scan go? And you went, yeah, just come home. But not in a way that made me think anything of it.
Well done me then for not
I know,
giving
you
you
did a really
enough
good job.
clues.
Because you were dead. You went, yeah. Just come home, it's fine. We're all looking forward to seeing you. Scan was great. Da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, okay. Drove home.
I'm
and
sobbing in the back of the car at that point.
I pulled up just as you guys had come back from the hospital. And I got out of the car going, hiya. And you broke. You just fell. And I was like, oh. Because you'd not told me. I was quite angry about that for a while. I get why you did it now. But for a while, I think I was mad that you hadn't told me when everyone else knew.
You were driving home. I wasn't going to tell you that information when you were driving home. And I remember Laura coming and picking you up off the tarmac and saying, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, she did.
Wow.
So that was a tough time. So she had another surgery and she was lined up for further radiotherapy. We went back for the radiotherapy planning scan and that tumour had grown back in 2 weeks. So we'd outrun it for so long, but it was just getting faster and faster, wasn't it? And we managed to get her on a course of Avastin, which really helped, actually. It really reduced the swelling and reduced the symptoms. And she bounced back, didn't she? She was getting up really early, walking the dog, making breakfast for everyone. And that brings the hope back, and you're like, oh, well, maybe. But the scan that she had early in the new year showed we were just reducing the symptoms. So as a last-ditch attempt, we went out to Dusseldorf, where she had some viral therapy through an amaya, which is like a little reservoir in her skull. So that was another surgery. And yeah, I got to spend some really nice time out in Dusseldorf with Laura. She was really poorly, but it was time together, which was time taken away from Gracie, which was tough. And unfortunately, when we got back around Easter, the amaya had become not infected, but it had failed. So she had to go back in and have more surgery. And that was around Easter time. And really things declined quite quickly from there. And that was really tough because we were watching it, weren't we, every day.
Did watching Laura be so poorly like that and losing Laura bring back a lot of you losing your sister Laura?
Not really in that sense, because
I know it was different.
It was different in that I didn't witness my sister declining. She was just there, and then she wasn't there. With Laura, we went through every painful stage. And seeing someone you love die like that is really hard, because she could walk, and then she couldn't walk. We had to help her to the bathroom, and then we had to use the commode, and then we had to have a bed downstairs. Oh, it's brutal. And I know that people, it's really precious to be able to die at home with the people you love around you. But actually, it's really, really hard. And I would say to anyone embarking on that, just be aware that it's tough. It's really tough to see that. It's a privilege. And we were bathing her with the help of Leo, my sister-in-law that was, and she was really helpful because she was a trained nurse and helped us to take care of Laura, and we had district nurses that came in. But actually, to see somebody lose everything and to see them not able to eat or drink for 11 days before they die, that's tough. And it puts a massive amount of pressure on you as a family. And I am honoured that we were all there together, but it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Should we take a break?
No, I'm all right. You know what? I cry all the time. I cry all the time.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
It was the hardest day for any of us, wasn't it?
Yeah. How do you feel? I'm trying to not ask this as your daughter. I'm trying to ask this as...
I'll try not to look at you as my daughter then. Okay.
But sort of the family after Laura died, for a lot of people it can rip them apart. It can blow up the family. How is your take on that on your family, not my family?
Well, Gracie, my family, who you may know.
Wait, so why are we speaking as I think you have to look at each other as mother and daughter, don't you?
Yeah. No, I think I'm so grateful for the family that I do have, and I think that we've never been closer. The three of us probably, with Mark. I think we've supported each other, but it is really difficult because, it's like those biorhythms where you're up and down, and everyone's at different stages. So when you have a bad day and someone else is having a good day, you kind of feel like I don't really want to say how I'm feeling because I'll bring everyone down to my level. And you are very much kind of on tiptoes, really, aren't you? Walking on eggshells and trying not to upset the other person. And it's difficult. But I'm so grateful for the family that I have, and I feel like you and I particularly are quite good at talking about it, and we have our own way of walking and talking, which has been really therapeutic. None of us have had any counselling, but I don't know whether at some point we might need that. But at the moment, we're kind of just supporting each other, and maybe counselling will be great at some point, but it won't change the fact that Laura's dead.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it as well.
And I've built quite a strong wall made out of like really rubbish Jenga bricks, not even like the proper branded Jenga bricks,
Jenga,
the Poundland.
Yeah,
Poundland.
I did want to.
Jenga.
It's quite emotional, so I didn't want to pick that
No,
up.
but Jenga, why are you
Is it
saying
Jenga or
for?
Jenga?
I don't know.
I thought
Stop
it
trying
was
to sound
Jenga.
posh.
All right, Jenga.
Jenga
Maybe
Jenga bricks, all
But
right.
it's Poundland.
You've got
Jenga.
Poundland Jenga bricks as kind of a
Poundland
defence.
Can we
Jenga
just say
bricks.
Jenga? You're all doing my head in.
Poundland Jenga,
Jenga.
and I feel like I built a wall, and counselling might poke the bricks
Yeah.
through, and the whole thing might come crumbling
Okay.
down. So at the moment, while the tower is still standing, I don't really want to do any professional talking. I also don't want someone going, but how do you feel?
No.
But how do you
you
feel? Genuinely.
Genuinely, how do I feel? I feel up and down. I feel some days I'm okay. I've crammed my life full of being busy as I possibly can, running marathons, writing books, setting up foundations. And
Just to name a few.
and I'm not naive enough to think that that's for any other reason than to fill up the dead space, you know? Because if I
Very
think
well
too
put.
hard,
The dead space.
the dead space, in many ways. And I feel like if I can be really busy and productive, then I don't have to think. But
Are
when I
you
do
finding that helpful now? Are there ever any moments where you just wished, God, I need a breather?
yeah, but when you have the breather, that's it. That's in the dead space, isn't it? Where all the thoughts come back.
And you're just trying to put those away.
Yeah, I'm just running away from things probably.
We're about
physically.
to go away to Portugal for 3 weeks to walk for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think that'll probably be quite good therapy.
I think I'm probably going to cry for 3 weeks, aren't I? Cry
Yeah.
walking
The
and
Camino
talking.
del
De Santiago.
de Santiago. I
Yeah,
keep saying
which
it
is a
wrong.
pilgrimage, which lots of people do for reasons of grief or
Like Spencer Matthews, when we spoke to him.
Yes,
yeah,
he
he
did.
talked about
Absolutely.
pilgrimage as well.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be really interesting. And I mean, some days last night I'd borrowed Laura's sun hat, and that brought back. I felt really bad last night. I felt really sad.
did.
Was it anticipating this conversation a little bit, do you think?
I don't know. It might have been the fact that it's Mark's birthday today, and then you have all those memories of the things you did on previous birthdays. Maybe things before things. Those periods leading up to anniversaries or birthdays or things always seem to be really tough. More tough than the actual day itself. I mean, I'm happy to talk about Laura. It's not that I'm trying to avoid
We always
talking. I mean,
talk
God, I
about
wrote a
Laura.
book about the whole story, so I'm not running from it. But I just feel like I don't want to allow too much space for it to grow like one of those magic sponges and fill everything up, because then I won't be able to function. And then I'll take to my bed like a Victorian and do nothing but lie in my bed like that and make people bring me things.
I do really want to ask how you look after yourself, because I have to be honest, when I hear what you're saying, I resonate with it totally in many cases.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think as now it's been many years past, a lot of that filling my time isn't about Liam all the time. It's actually just about me. And
Yeah.
That's so
maybe
much
I
worse,
need to
Callum.
take.
You need to take a breather.
I
Yeah.
do need to take a
You
breather.
really-
I need to take a
Busy
breather.
man.
I understand that.
I will just
but-
ask you, Callum.
but-
I'd just like to say, what did you do?
and when Liam died, all I did was fill my time, fundraising things. Like we all through our we all just went overdrive to
Yeah.
do these things. But I hear what you're saying, and I hear a lot, and I see that in Gracie as well. And I hear a lot of the things that I went through and that I did, but they weren't. It was useful to a point, but they weren't always looking after me. They were allowing me to put a block up, to ignore some of those emotions and feelings. They were helpful to an extent, but there was a point where I also did need to address those feelings. What do you think you do that helps you, other than keeping busy, which is totally legitimate and perfect, but are you doing things that are helping you, that are giving you that moment to think about things?
Yeah, I probably am a bit.
That was not convincing.
I am a bit. No, I run, so I go out and run, although I do like to listen to things when I run so I don't hear the voices in my head.
Oh my God.
Drowning out the voices. No, but, so I like to listen to things, so I don't listen. But Gracie's kind of slightly alarmed by the voices in my head. No, but the thing that has really helped is Gracie and I are using walking as therapy in a weird way. And we have a hill near us, Pendle Hill, which is not quite a mountain, but it's fairly
Not far
big.
off.
And we have come up with this plan that we're going to go up it 100 times this year. It started off as 25 times before Laura turned 25 in December. And then we got carried away, and now we're doing 100. And we're up to 58. 58.
Wow, well on track.
Yeah, well on track. Well, I could do with getting a few more in. And it's lovely. And it takes us about an hour, and we do it as many times as we can in a week. And that time of just being outside, watching the seasons, watching the weather, and we've done it in all weather. We've done it in snow and ice and pouring rain and sunshine. We've done it early in the morning, we've done it late at night, and that's just kind of ring fence time. And Mark comes up sometimes, and sometimes we have guest walkers who we allow to join our Pendle Bitches Club, but it's quite exclusive.
I'm still excited to.
You come, you'll enjoy it.
You're in good company. Who did we take up recently?
Yeah, we took Peter Kay up, and we had a friend over from America, and he came up with us, and it's a little exclusive club, but it's our time. Yeah. And it's really precious time where we talk
about Laura. Whenever I get to the top, I go, "Hi, Laura," and shit up some walkers who are like, "Who are they talking to?"
Yeah, because we scatter some of Laura's ashes up there, and it does feel it's a place that she loved. She loved going up Pendle, and so
I hated it.
You hated it. In fact, we once went up when it was the anniversary of the Pendle Witches. And everybody that we were walking with ran off and left us because Grace was such a nightmare. In fact, Leo said, "If I don't walk away, I'm going to push her off the top."
Wait, why were you on that? Yeah.
I was just
she moaned the entire
way.
She moaned the entire way. She was very hard work, and now she does it for fun.
Do you see what I mean about the wrong one went?
No, the wrong one didn't go, Gracie. And you know what? This whole grief journey has been awful. But I'm really grateful for our relationship now. And I also feel that siblings get neglected so much through this process and this whole glass child concept. My focus was on Laura and finding treatments.
Can you explain what the glass child concept is?
Maybe Grace can explain it because she brought it to my attention.
No, I struggle with this every time. I can give you my interpretation of it.
Yeah, we'll do that.
So when you have a child who is terminally ill, or not necessarily terminally ill, but just absorbs the majority of the parent's time, any siblings, especially if you're the only sibling, become almost transparent. They become like glass to see the sibling with the illness or the disability, and all they get asked is, "How's your sibling? How's your sibling? How's your brother? How's your sister?" And they just become a way to see that other sibling. And the term glass child is... It sounds very weird, doesn't it? But I think it's a really effective way of saying that child still matters, but just because they're transparent and you look right through them doesn't mean they aren't still there.
No.
And I kind of showed you that, and at the time you were like, "You're not one of them," and you did fob me off a little bit, which you've admitted now. But I think you have now learnt that was kind of what was happening. It didn't mean that you didn't love me, and it didn't mean that you didn't care, but you just had to prioritise Laura.
And that's really tough because there is just only so much of you to go around, and you're spread so thinly that, you know, the slightest thing can just push you over the edge because you're trying to do so many things, and they're big things. You know, you're trying to save somebody. You're trying to stop them dying of cancer, which is really difficult, and you're also trying to make potentially their last years enjoyable and comfortable, and still be a mother to your other child and be a wife to your husband. What? Wife to your husband.
Yeah,
that was
right.
and a daughter, and you still have all those roles, but actually you can't do all those things. You can't do it, and it's really hard. And I let you down in that I was trying to do everything for Laura, and I didn't always have time for you.
I don't know if you... I just want to jump in. I want to just jump in and say I don't think you have let Gracie down at all. Sorry, Gracie, if you disagree with this.
You are marvellous.
She might not be marvellous. I'm the only real one here. But no, and you know, this is something that I've spoken about with my parents before as well. I don't know if I've ever used the word glass child, but like, of course the attention goes where it is needed most. It makes absolute sense. I don't think the glass child kind of description is necessarily saying it should be any other way.
Yeah,
maybe there can be times that things can change. But, you know, my parents still made time to speak to me and chat to see how I was. But my overriding memory, of course, when Liam was ill is that everyone was asking me about Liam.
Yeah,
but
course.
Of course they were.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't expect it any other differently. I definitely wasn't let down. And I know that Gracie wasn't let down
I think
either.
it was a difficult age because it was the time that you were 16 to 21. So
Which
those
is awful anyway. Like,
years where you really needed me.
It was brutal. I had a tough 4 years.
It was brutal. And I don't think I just let you down. I think I let, my mum lost her mum and I had no headspace for that. I was sad, but I couldn't find the sadness I would have ordinarily had in losing a grandparent because she was 96. I have no heart left. I felt like it was, and I should have helped my mum more with planning the funeral and stuff, but I just didn't have it in me. And so there's only so much of you to go around, and I think you just have to make sacrifices at some point, and not everything can get the attention that it should. And everything was so concentrated into that time period that, I was just doing my best. But you and I had a spectacular row in the street in New York, didn't we? And honestly, people were turning around thinking it was a theatrical performance because it was by Broadway.
You were just going to start singing.
And honestly, I am sorry that you hate me. It was a bit like that, and it was emotional. But we were both hurting really badly and trying to do our best, and you were kind of giving me a cry for help, and I was going, I haven't got time for that. And it was just really difficult, but we were always on the same side, and we were always pulling for the same team, all three of us. But it was just difficult, and it put so much pressure on a family. And I used to see, when you see a story in the news of a dreadful tragedy, and then you'd hear that the parents are split up, and you'd think, but how can they split up? They've just been through this awful thing. Now I see exactly how a family can get fractured by dealing with huge traumas, because if your trauma doesn't look like their trauma, are they even feeling it? You just really struggle with that, because it's so profound and so deep and fundamental that you expect everyone else to be feeling exactly the same as you at that same time. And people are different.
People are totally different, and I think what is great about your guys' relationship is that you are so open about things. You're so open about how you're feeling and the experiences you've been through. And I know that there will be people listening to this right now who are perhaps even envious of that kind of relationship. What would you say helps build those bonds or helps you make those discussions? I'm just thinking of someone, who may not have even spoke the loved person's name to their parents anymore. What would you say to them about building that?
I think it's just trying to speak, and I get, everyone grieves differently. Like you said, my dad grieves very differently to you and I. But we all are very fortunate in that we like to speak about Laura. I think if you have one thing in common, if you have one thing that you can do, like for us it's walking, sometimes even if you're not saying anything, you are actually saying a lot. I think sometimes just being and just kind of allowing each other to grieve differently and acknowledging that people do grieve differently.
Yeah.
If there is a conversation that you can have, being open and saying, look, it would really help me if maybe we did speak that person's name more, if that's something you feel able to do.
Yeah.
I think it's worth doing.
And I think it's being honest as well.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes parents don't want to seem vulnerable, or they want you to have that confidence that they know what they're doing, because parents most often don't, actually. And it's just a facade that we know what we're doing.
Don't spoil it for me.
It's just a facade, I'm sorry. Just pull back the curtain of the Wizard of Oz and we're all just like a little old man there behind the curtain. But, sort of slightly tortured analogy there. But we don't know what we're doing either. And no one gives us a book as to how to deal with our own grief or our child's grief. And so sometimes being honest as a parent and saying, I'm struggling too. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know how to help you because I don't know what you need from me. I'm having a bad day. I really miss her, It's just honesty. It's tough though, being honest.
It's tough,
because you make yourself vulnerable, don't you? She says, sobbing her heart out.
In front of 3 cameras.
Such an idiot. Oh God, I'll probably
Not
have
at
a
all.
scar issue.
No, not at all. But you have done so much since Laura died, and I think that is part of your ridiculously absurd coping mechanisms. alongside kind of campaigning, setting up the foundation, keeping Laura's legacy alive, getting a bench, getting a road sign, all the incredible things that you've done, and standing in cancer conferences and begging people to understand the symptoms, all that, you've written a book. A book that I am yet to finish properly.
You know how it ends, and you
I
know
know
what's
how
in
it
it.
ends. But it's all about our story, and that process was something that you started virtually as soon as Laura died. Why? What, you know?
It's a good question. I think I started writing down as a way of making some space in my head, because if I could like tip all the words out onto the page, then I didn't have to hold them. So each night I'd write everything down, turn a page, right? Mm-hmm. That's that bit gone. And it helped to just write things down from a practical point of view, to remember where we'd been, who we'd spoken to, what the meetings were, what the appointments were. But then kind of the story became a bit more unusual, didn't it, when we were doing all these mad things and everything was being covered by the media, and we were meeting people like Michelle Obama. And I wanted to record it because I just felt like it was such an extraordinary journey that we went on. And then it also became about how amazing Laura was and what she learned from this whole experience, because she changed hugely, not just because she was ill. Her whole worldview changed. She'd always been the planner, we didn't do any French girl, the girl who was going off to work for MI5 and went off to Chicago to work as an intern in the summer holidays, who was doing everything. And her life was all about the future. She was learning Persian. She was doing everything, wasn't she? And she then became a person who appreciated the smallest thing. She would spend 10 minutes trying to rescue a bee. She would be taking photographs of this tree or that view or the canal, or just sitting there smiling where she was with the family. And she learned that it isn't all about the future. It's about now, because now is all we have. And I think I wanted to share that, because there's that great footage of her watching a Slim Fast advert on TV going, eat the cake. Nobody cares whether you've got an extra £4 on you. It's not about that. It's about the life that you live and the people you love. And sometimes, in fact, she said that it was only when she found out she was going to die that she really learned to live. And I wanted to share that message. And that felt like something I needed to do. I needed to get that out there, because this could happen to any family. It happened to ours, but it could just as easily happen to your next door neighbour or your friend or you. And we all need to learn that life isn't all about waiting until we've got that new job or we've moved house or we've lost 10 stone or whatever. It's about now, and it's about being with the people that you love and doing the things that matter, whether that's going off and skydiving or whether it's about helping other people, because she also became so much kinder and so much more considerate and understanding of other people, didn't she?
Yeah.
No. She was amazing.
She was.
As are you.
No.
We're all going to do that.
You are, Mum. You're bloody fantastic.
And all those amazing things that you've done in memory of her. But also, hopefully they've encouraged us all to try and be more Laura.
Be more Laura.
There's
Just before we finish, go on.
Aren't there?
Well, Tessa, you had the T-shirt
Be
on
kind,
today.
be honest, be brave, be silly.
Okay.
Not in that order, probably, in different orders.
You're right.
I think I can achieve a couple of those quite easy, like being silly. But I think there are some... There four... She wrote that to a primary school, didn't she?
Yeah, she'd been asked to write the Leavers Letter, which is a big honour to be asked by Barrowford School, which is an amazing little school in our village. And people like Alistair Campbell and Sean Dyche had already done it in previous years. So when Laura was asked to do it, it felt like a big honour. And she wrote this amazing letter, which basically said, do you know what? Life might not go to plan, but you'll be surprised at what's around the corner. And it might not be necessarily a positive thing initially, but sometimes good things come from bad things.
Amazing. And what a note to leave it on. We've got one final question, though, which feels odd to ask because it is so recent. But what would you tell yourself a year ago, coming into this world of grief? Actually, even younger you, 5-year-old
Yeah.
you. I think perhaps that's
Yeah.
more appropriate.
Yeah, I think so. I think I would say just because no one's told you doesn't mean it's automatically your fault. And I would give myself a big hug.
Can we give you a big hug
Yeah,
now?
I'd give little you a big hug too.
Oh God, I've cried loads. I'm such a big wimp.
You're not.
But you know what? Crying's fine.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means your emotions sometimes bubble up.
But your incredible book, The Stars Will Still Be There. Where can you get it?
Oh, anywhere. Just come round ours. I'll give you a copy. No, it's on Amazon and it's on Audible, which is weird because that's someone else reading it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
that is odd. Well,
So you can hear somebody reading it who doesn't cry all the way through it. That's
She'd have been a
much
mess.
better.
thank you so much for
Thanks,
joining
Mum.
us.
Thank you for
Love you.
having me. It's been lovely.
The problem with doing these episodes is that they just feel so rushed and they're so emotional, especially when it's your
Yeah.
mum.
No,
I kept having to like pinch myself or stop myself from crying, which I can't imagine.
I feel like we
how
could
it's
just
you.
talk to most of our guests to all of them for days, really. They're all...
Not days.
Not my mum, no. I live with her, it's enough.
But I hope that episode for you guys was an interesting listen. It was very emotional. I found myself... It was a tough listen, but we can all learn so much from the Nuttall family, absolutely. And, if you want to send a message to us about your own story, please do. How do people do that, Gracie?
We are at the Dead Sibling Society on Instagram and TikTok, and at the Dead Sib Society on X, formerly known as Twitter.
And we're encouraging people, sounds like a beg this, doesn't
Doesn't
it? A
it? Every
scrambled
time.
beg.
A scrambled beg, as
to
my mother would say.
review us, to like, to subscribe.
Tell your
to-
friends, tell your gran, tell your neighbours,
Yeah.
tell your dog. You'd probably like it as well.
Yeah.
He probably wouldn't, but he can't tell you, so.
All dogs he's. Anyway.
Mine is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Do that. Do all those
Do all
things.
those things. And thank you all so much for listening or watching or however you're getting your podcasts.